If you are a European football fan and you have spent any time in America during this World Cup, there is a very specific moment you have probably experienced at least once. You are talking about the tournament with an American, everything is going great, and then they say it. Soccer. And something in you just reacts, maybe a wince or a sigh, or an actual argument, because to most Europeans calling it soccer feels like a symbol of everything America does not quite understand about the world's most popular sport. But here is the thing that is going to make this video either very satisfying or very uncomfortable depending on which side of the Atlantic you are on. The word soccer was not invented by Americans. It was invented by the English, specifically at Oxford University in the 1880s, more than 160 years after the Football Association first wrote down the rules in 1863. And the Europeans who spend the most time being annoyed by Americans saying soccer are largely the people whose ancestors created the word in the first place. Before we get into it, here is a question with a real, verifiable answer. The word soccer originated in which country? Drop your answer in the comments now because the real answer changes the entire football versus soccer debate. And honestly, most people on both sides of this argument get it completely wrong. So here is the actual history, and it is more interesting than most people realize. In 1863, the Football Association in England, founded by Ebenezer Cobb Morley, who also drafted the original laws of the game, wrote down the first standardized rules for what we now call football. At the time, there were multiple versions of the game being played at British schools and universities, including Sheffield rules in the north and rugby football, which allowed players to carry the ball. Oxford University students in the 1880s developed a habit of adding the suffix "er" to shortened versions of words, the same way rugby became rugger. Association football became a soccer, and then simply soccer. Charles Refford Brown, an English footballer who captained the famous Corinthian Football Club and went on to become a notable Football Association official, is widely credited with popularizing the term. Stefan Szymanski, a professor of sports economics at the University of Michigan, confirmed in a 2014 academic paper titled "It's Football, Not Soccer, and Vice Versa" that soccer is thoroughly British in origin and was widely used across England for decades. And here is the part that should genuinely embarrass the people who get most upset about Americans saying soccer. Britain started dropping the word in the mid-20th century, and the reason Szymanski identified is genuinely ironic. Brits began turning against the word soccer partly as a backlash against American cultural influence. They got so annoyed at Americans using a word they considered American that they forgot they invented it themselves. Now, here is why America kept the word, and the reason is completely logical and has nothing to do with arrogance or cultural ignorance. When association football was growing in popularity in America in the late 19th and early 20th century, there was already a dominant sport called football, what the rest of the world calls American football. Calling association football in America would have created genuine confusion that simply did not exist in England, where no competing sport was claiming the same name. So Americans used the British slang term soccer to make the distinction clear. The United States Soccer Football Association officially used both words in its name until 1945, when it dropped football altogether. Today, the U.S. Soccer Federation, the official governing body of the sport in America, operates under that same legacy name, and Major League Soccer, founded in 1993, has grown into a top 10 global league by attendance. Today, 43 of the 45 FIFA-affiliated countries where English is an official language use football in their official name. Only Canada and the United States use soccer, not because they are ignorant of the sport, but simply because they already had a sport called football and needed a different word to avoid confusion. Now, here is where the timing of this video becomes important. 2 days ago, the United States men's national team was eliminated from the 2026 World Cup by Belgium 4-1 in Seattle. By any measure, it was a comprehensive defeat. Coach Mauricio Pochettino said afterwards that his team was simply not good enough. Midfielder Tyler Adams said, and these are his exact words, "It stinks." Christian Pulisic, the most recognizable American player in the world right now, fractured his leg during the match, and the game drew 30 million viewers in the United States, confirmed by Yahoo Sports as the most watched soccer match in American history. More Americans watched their team lose 4-1 than have ever watched any soccer match in this country before. In the hours after the defeat, social media filled with honest reactions. Dave Portnoy said the team absolutely folded under the bright lights. Multiple analysts noted that the United States is still significantly behind European nations in terms of football infrastructure, coaching, youth development, and the basic depth of talent needed to compete at this level. Now here is where it gets genuinely interesting, because the United States men's national team's elimination does not tell one clean story, it tells two. The first story is that Belgium, a country of 11 million people with generations of football infrastructure behind it, completely outclassed the United States on the biggest stage American soccer has ever had. The second story is that 30 million Americans watched that happen live. The most watched Super Bowl in American history drew around 124 million viewers. The most watched NBA Finals game draws around 15 to 18 million. The United States men's national team losing 4-1 to Belgium drew 30 million people to their screens in genuine suspense and left many of them genuinely heartbroken when it ended. American soccer viewership is not where European football viewership is yet, but it is moving in a direction that would have been completely unimaginable a generation ago. Here is the escalation that ties all of this together. The football versus soccer debate is in some ways a proxy for a much bigger conversation about where America actually stands in relation to the rest of the world on this sport. Europeans correct Americans for saying soccer as if the word itself is evidence of how little America understands the game. But the word soccer is English, coined at Oxford University, documented in the laws of the game era. America kept it for a logical reason. And while Europeans were busy being annoyed about the terminology, 30 million Americans just watched their national team get knocked out of a World Cup and felt genuine heartbreak about it. That is not the reaction of a country that does not understand the sport, but rather the reaction of a country that is starting to feel it the way Europeans have always felt it. The word might be different, but the feeling is getting closer every single year. All right, let us go back to the quiz. The word soccer originated in which country? The answer is C, England. Confirmed by Britannica, Time Magazine, the University of Michigan, and Wikipedia. Oxford University students invented it in the 1880s. Charles Refford Brown of Corinthian Football Club popularized it. Ebenezer Cobb Morley's Football Association used a version of it in official contexts. Britain used it for decades and then quietly dropped it partly because Americans kept using it. The most ironic debate in sport is the one where Europeans get angry at Americans for using a word that Europeans invented, forgot about, and then blamed on Americans. Now, I want to hear from you. If you are European, does knowing that soccer is a British word change how you feel about Americans using it? And if you are American, does any of this make you want to start calling it football? Drop it in the comments, because this one is going to get a genuine reaction from both sides. If you liked this video, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because there is a lot more coming before the final on July 19th. And always remember, whether you call it football or football, the game always brings us together. I'll see you on the next one.